Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about an astrologer who predicted the death of a president. And of course, there's been so many entanglements with astrologers and presidents, such as Joan Quigley with President Reagan, such as I talk about Jean Dixon with President Kennedy. And this was the case where the leaders of our country used astrologers, heaven forbid, or didn't use an astrologer in the case of Kennedy. But let me give you a little background about a few astrologers. Well, in the case of President Kennedy, I, with my own eyes, saw that she came on television, Jean Dixon, lots of presidents used her, and she begged Kennedy not to come to Dallas because essentially he would be assassinated. I saw it on TV. Yes, I was small, but I'll never forget it. It's one of the reasons how and why I got into astrology, because I always wondered how that woman knew. I was probably in first or second grade, but I'll never forget that. Then Joan Quigley. She predicted to Ronald Reagan that that was a very dangerous day, that he almost died. He was an assassination attempt. Okay, a lot of us astrologers saw the day that Trump had a near miss. And I told all of my students and did videos on it, said, look, Mars and Uranus are going to be right on his midheaven, and this could be extremely dangerous for Trump. He must be cautious. But here is where I want to talk about a long time ago, an astrologer who predicted a president's election, that he would be elected, and soon after he would die, and was absolutely right. So I had to pull up the chart and see what she was seeing. So who am I talking about? Warren G. Harding. And he was the president in the 1800s. I forgot exactly what year. As a matter of fact, yes, I think he was elected in 1920. That is true. And he came into office 1921. And looking at his chart, well, looking at this, every president, there was a big prediction that when a president was elected on an even year, like every 10 years, like 1920, 1930, 1940, 1960, that was Kennedy, that they either died in office or they were assassinated. This was true all the way up to Reagan. And Nancy, his wife, was very, very scared about this. So she hired Joan, especially after Joan said, look, this is a dangerous time, and hired her to protect him. So this works. I don't care what you think about astrology. I've been an astrologer for 40+ years, and it absolutely works. So I actually pulled this chart up for all of my students in class, and we studied it because it is a classic textbook case where everything that I teach came to fruition on this day. It was absolutely seen in Harding's chart. This day would be a heart attack. And actually, the astrologer, whose name was Madame Marcia Champney, it's spelled C-H-A-M-P-N-E-Y, and she was the astrologer. And Florence was Warren Harding's wife that consulted the astrologer. So let me go ahead and show you exactly what you can see that predicted this president's early demise, his heart attack, before he finished his term. So I'm going to scoot over. While I do, I want to remind everyone, sign up for my free newsletter. Go to galacticcenter.org. Sign up, get my predictions every week delivered to your email address. While you're there, check out my Patreon page. Become part of our community. And don't forget, the Galactic Planner, it's about to expire. So if you want to try it out completely free for a month, go to galacticplanner.com, does your individual chart, personal chart, and puts all the transits aspects into your calendar so you know what's going on every month. And last but not least, if you want to learn how to do this for yourself, my semester 1 starts September 22nd. Come and be my student and learn how to do exactly what I'm doing with this chart in Vedic astrology. So putting up Harding's chart, we have that he has an Aquarius ascendant. Aquarians, by the way, are very much humanitarians, but I did hear that, I didn't know a lot, but I heard there was a lot of scandals around Harding. For one thing, his wife had been married before. Heaven forbid, she was a divorcee when he married her, and that was not okay back then. But looking at his chart, now he has quite an array of planets in his 9th house. By the way, the 9th house can deal with the law, the legal process. He has Saturn conjunct the Sun, Mars, and Mercury. And in his 8th house, he has Venus and Rahu. Okay, but I want you to focus in on where the Sun is. It is actually in between two malefic planets. It sits between Saturn and Mars. When a planet sits between two malefics, it's called hemmed in, and it's actually called a Papakatari Yoga, which means that planet doesn't have the freedom. It is bound. And that's his Sun. And actually, the Sun in a chart rules your heart. And he died of a heart attack. So you could see that right away with the fact that the Sun is hemmed in, and it's even in the sign of Libra. Libra is the Sun's debilitation sign, so it's weak. But they're in the 9th house, so he did well with law, legal practice. He must have been a lawyer. I'm not sure. I should have looked that up. But hey, if you're a president, you're dealing a lot with the law. So I'll give it that. Now, what we do is first we look at dashas. What dasha was he in? The dashas are the predictive tool that we use in Vedic astrology. There is nothing like the dashas in Western astrology. And I say that because the dashas are based on the nakshatras. And those of you that have heard me talk enough have heard me talk about the 27 nakshatras. And so what they are, they're smaller portions of the zodiac, 13 degrees, 20 minutes to be exact, and there's 27 of them. If you divide the 360-degree horoscope into 13-degree, 20-minute segments, you will have 27 of them. And each one of these portions is a nakshatra. So the nakshatras are ruled by planets. So whatever nakshatra your natal moon sits in your birth chart, the planet that rules that nakshatra will start your entire life cycles. And therefore, those planets of those dashas will reveal what you're going through at certain times in your life. And when you go into the dashas of planets in a particular house, it'll bring out the qualities of that house. And many times, you could look at a chart and you can see something in an individual's life, but it's never occurred because they haven't gone into that dasha yet. It could lay dormant till they go into that dasha. And looking at Harding's chart, he has Venus and Rahu in his 8th house of death. And guess what cycle he was in when he died? Rahu Venus. They're both together in the 8th house. So it brought to fruition those two planets. Now this period of time only lasted about probably 2 years, maybe 2.5. So, and it wasn't until he went into that cycle that there was the possibility of a death. And so then the next step, what we do is we look at where the transiting planets are, just like you do in Western astrology. And when you plug in where the planets were on that particular day, I'm looking at where they were, and Mars on that day was 18 degrees of Cancer. Of course, it's in a 6th house, which is the house of health. And Mars being there can mean a health problem. Now, Mars is there every 2 years. But when he's in the dasha of Rahu Venus and Mars goes into a critical place in the 6th house, this is where the timing of every 2 years, this 2 years, it is critical. And if you will look at his Mars and count to his Sun, it will go 4 houses, and that is a square from Mars. That is one of Mars' most powerful aspects. Mars has special aspects. Of course, a conjunction and opposition, all the planets have, and that's 100% in power. But Mars' special aspects are 4 and 8 from where it's located. And if you count from Mars, 1, 2, 3, 4, the Sun is exactly 18 degrees from Mars. I mean, from Mars, they're in an exact square. Mars was 18 Cancer, the Sun is 18 degrees of Libra, exactly squaring on that day. Furthermore, the psychic told his wife, told her, this was before he got elected, that yes, he would be elected, he would win, but he would die before he finished his term. And she said he would die of mysterious reasons and quickly. We can actually see it was his heart, but Neptune was very close. Neptune was situated where it was within a degree of squaring Mercury. So Neptune sits at around 28 degrees of Cancer, and Mercury sits at almost 26 degrees. So within a 3-degree orb, that's what I always give. Neptune to his Mercury, and if you will look at his Mercury, it's in the 9th house, but it rules the 8th. Virgo, it rules the 8th house. So Mercury can deal with death, and Neptune aspecting it. It was something that happened suddenly. He was on a business trip in San Francisco and fell sick and had a heart attack and died suddenly. Now, another thing that I'm seeing that's very crucial in this chart, but it's really the Mars and the dashas that give it that much credence. But looking at this, Saturn, if you'll look where transiting Saturn is, let's see, Saturn was transiting in, well, this is kind of interesting. It was in Virgo, and it was 22 degrees, which in the United States chart that I use, Saturn sits at 24 degrees of Virgo. So Saturn in the sky being 22 degrees of Virgo almost sits exactly on the United States Saturn, which means loss of a president. Saturn conjuncting Saturn. This only happens once every 30 years, guys. This is rare. But aside from that, you can't see the United States chart here. I just have it memorized from working with it so much. But Saturn is transiting, and it is right there in a semi-exact to Mars, where Mars sits at 21 degrees and Saturn is at 22 degrees. So it's in a semi-sextile, excuse me. So it's actually in a 2-12 relationship. And I look at, you know, counting from the planets to the planets. But Another thing that is exact, if I might add, that really is another giveaway that this was the day it was going to happen, is look where transiting K2 was. 19 degrees of Aquarius. Look at his ascendant. 20 degrees of Aquarius, less than 1 degree. K2 is losses. And it was right on his ascendant. So K2 on the ascendant, Mars squaring the sun. Yeah, and I can't even imagine that the dasha was exactly of the 2 planets in the 8th house. So, and Neptune squaring Mercury, Mercury ruler of the 8th house. This was all here, and those planets, Neptune, Mars, and so many planets were in Cancer in his 6th house of health. There was a problem, and it was squaring his planets in Libra. So this, you can see, can deal with the transits hitting planets exactly on that day, plus the dasha in line predicted death. Now, thinking about that astrologer, we know this astrologer was probably not a Vedic astrologer, had to be Western. I just want you to know that when you're looking at transits and they make an exact hit in your chart, it's happening in your Western tropical chart as well. They're just in a different sign, but the aspects are the same. Why? Because the whole zodiac falls backwards 24 degrees. Well, so do the transiting planets. They go backwards. So the aspects hit at the same time, but they're in a different sign. And usually they're in the same houses, by the way, from the Western tropical to the Vedic sidereal. But you don't have the beauty of the dashas. And the dashas nailed it, because every 2 years Mars would have squared his sun. How would we know that that was the year that it was going to take him out? Because his dasha was Rahu, Venus, and they're both together in the 8th house of death. So with that, I think I'll close. I just wanted you to get a feel of how we do this and make our predictions. But the thing that fascinated me more than anything, and why I even looked at this, is that an astrologer predicted this, and I had to see for myself why that astrologer would have predicted exactly when this president would die and what it was all about. And it's all in the stars. It truly is all in the stars. Now, my question always is, could it have been prevented? That's a big question. I think many times yes, but sometimes no. Some things are destined and some things we have free will. And what things we have free will with, I don't think everyone knows for sure. But I believe your chart is a sum accumulation of everything you've ever been in your past lives. And therefore, you do have free will to change things. But it takes a concerted effort to change yourself and consciousness in order to change the future. So that's my feel on it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you have seen something you couldn't see before through astrology. And it's awakened you to the power of astrology. And remember, if you want to learn, become my student. That's September 22nd. We're going to start the beginning class. So come and be my student. Thank you for joining me today.